Let's give it another minute or two here. There's still some board members coming in, it looks like. Try to keep us on schedule. I know there's another meeting at 1/2 past. All right. Looks like, I think, pretty good representation across the boards right now, it looks like. All right. So I guess, do you want each of the board chairs, do you want to just check for roll? And
I've got 5 out of 7 for Reading.
Okay.
I'm looking.
I have
4 so far. I have quorum if that's what we need. I'm just looking for the rest.
Okay.
I see at least 12 board members overall, so that's the quorum of the committee.
Yep. So I think we're good. Then why don't we go ahead and call the order? It looks like, yeah, so Mike's coming in. So let's go ahead and we'll call it to order at 7:02. And our first item on the agenda is, so for the record, then we're just calling the special meeting for the Personnel Search Committee on July 14th, 7 p.m. We are streaming live on the YouTube channel and also recording on Zoom, just for the record. Our first order of business is public comment on the agenda. So we do have some members of the public on, I can tell. So if you would like to speak, if you can either raise your hand in the video or the little hand symbol or thumbs up symbol on the chat side there so we can see. Limit it to 2 minutes if you don't mind, because we have a full agenda and we need to break this meeting for another meeting to happen afterwards. So name and address. And if John and Chris, if you can help me look for anybody from the public there, we'll unmute them and have them speak. If we don't see anybody here in a few minutes, we'll move on to the main item on the agenda.
I just see Jeff's cat.
We yield the floor to the cat. All right, seeing, it doesn't look like we have any other public comment. All right, so we'll move forward. Committee member comment. Any of the board members have any comments before we get started? Again, if you just want to raise your hand, we won't do roll call, keep things moving.
While people are queuing up, I just want to say thank you to Chris Hawker and Randy Hicks for chairing this committee and all of the incredible work that they've done. They've done a fabulous job of working with the search consultant, driving us forward, creating momentum. This is such an important and difficult task. And I can't say how much I appreciate them stepping up and driving it.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome, okay. But we've only just begun, John.
All right. Okay, then let's just move on then to item number 4, discussion possible action. Presentation by Dr. Arardi on community feedback and candidate profile. And I don't know, Randy or Chris, if any intro, or we just turn it over to Dr. Arardi for comments.
I think we can turn it over to Joe.
Yep.
Got you, Randy. Thank you. Todd, thank you. And folks, thanks for your time this evening. I have about 7 to 10 minutes of information I want to share. Plenty of time for you to ask questions. But I too want to thank Randy and Chris and the entire steering committee of 9. As Chris Hawker mentioned, the work is yet to begin. However, with that being said, the 9 members of the steering committee have put in extraordinary amount of time to review the application and be prepared for this evening. So thanks to all 9, and particularly thanks to the leadership of Chris and Randy. To all of the members of the boards of education, to the community members that are on, I want to start by sharing with you that although the entire profile was developed within a virtual platform, it is as deep a dive and as dense of a profile that I have put together in 3 years with 20 plus different school communities for over 300 community members to weigh in on a survey. Our community forums, we had 2 of them, and they had the best attendance that I've ever had at a forum. So people were not shy. They found the time, and maybe the convenience of the virtual platform worked to the advantage of being able to put this profile together. With that being said, I was able to hold a virtual meeting, faculty and staff in all 5 of your schools. I had a chance to speak with central office. I offered the opportunity to your elected officials. And as I mentioned, I think a combination of nearly 70 people total over 2 nights, sharing information pertaining to who they believe should be your next superintendent of schools. With all of that said, I took about a couple hundred pages of information and I put it into an executive summary. My commitment to anyone who called me, and I had probably 24 calls, or folks who waited in the survey, was confidentiality. So I've homogenized this in a way where you're not going to be able to recognize where the note could have come from. In many cases, it came from multiple sources. So with that being said, again, thank you to the committee and thank you to the community. The skills that are most important for that new superintendent, this is information for now the steering committee as they put together their questions for round 1 and round 2. The overarching thing, particularly from faculty and staff, is they're hoping that the next school leader has a deep and meaningful understanding of K-12 pedagogy. Although that leader may have been predominantly a school or a high school or elementary school, person to understand the respect at all levels within the organization. That was an important part of the work. Equally important was around climate and culture. They wanted the assurance that although someone may look just terrific on paper, the environment that they work in is a positive environment and that she or he had something to do with that positive climate or culture. They saw that as a priority. Faculty and staff saw it, and parents saw it also. Really important for ER9 is that your next school leader is strong in the fiscal frame and strong in the political frame. The political piece is less around what happens in Hartford and more around what happens with the 3 school boards that she or he will be working with in a very short period of time. Faculty and staff and community from survey, they're looking for someone who's going to roll up their sleeves, get their hands dirty, and work really hard. They want somebody that not only will be able to delegate, but will always demonstrate that they're working equally, if not harder, than anybody else within the organization. That was an important piece. And the last piece that I wanted to share, which was a large chunk of information that was really all over the place, and rightfully so, was they're hoping that somebody can come in, calm the water as calm as it possibly can be, and lead in a very, very unstable pandemic environment. So someone that is willing to hold on any initiative, watch, learn, embrace, and move forward with staff in the present environment, which is unknown for the new school year. As you move forward, character traits, I listed them alpha. They're not listed in priority, they're listed alphabetically. Someone with a quiet confidence, I love that term. Someone who has a moral compass that's uncompromising, a bright leader, someone with a sense of humor, and equally important, and probably the trait that was repeated more often than any others, was somebody who's willing to listen. And then there'd be lots of chatter around what that meant. They don't want someone who's going to listen for the sake of nodding her or his head and doing what they want someone who's genuinely going to listen to all levels of the organization. Information, I think, is important for the steering committee and important for the applicant, that ER9 is really proud of their K-12 student. They recognize that the Barlow graduate has a skill set that puts that young adult in a great position for higher ed, the work world, or the military. They're equally proud of the staff, and I've defined the staff as all layers, not just certified, but certified, non-certified, bus driver, teacher, administrator, that the communities take pride that they believe they have the right role models in front of their children. That's an important piece. Item 3 is a real tribute to the school board members that are on this evening, that particularly from the parent voice, that despite fiscal problems and concerns, not only in Easton and Reading, but across the state and across the country, that somehow, some way, you still have found priority money to make sure that co-curricular activities, the arts, performing arts, the fine arts, the athletics, the drama, are all still at a high level that you're proud of. It's a great experience for the student and the community is proud of. Pride around community partnerships and pride around a safe and nurturing environment. Parents believe that when they send their child to Easton Reading or Joel Barlow, that they're sending their child to a very safe place. Things to look to improve on. In every meeting that I had, there was at least a comment, in most cases, multiple comments around governance. And I think you know that much better than I do. But the concern around the profile is that they mean the community, they want to make sure that governance doesn't dominate that leader's ability to pay the needed attention to K-12 instruction. So the piece around the 3 separate boards, 1 superintendent, can that be streamlined and what can that look like? The new superintendent should be really in tune with what's happening with state and local and federal dollars. Concern within the community about retention, holding on to your absolute best administrators and teachers. Conversation around ER9 taking great pride of having an individualized program for every student. And the concern was around making sure that our most complex learners have that same opportunity. And then there was many comments, particularly from moms and dads, around the social emotional learning program. And I think that's an emerging program, a growing program in all 3 of your school boards. What I then tried to do was to chunk out information that appeared in the comments of the surveys and the data that I recorded after listening to either the forum, to a call, or to a group. And I think I put a couple in bold because I heard them often, that the community wants this new school leader to fully understand the intensity of the position and that the time that is needed to be successful in the position. I think that's a very respectful and polite way of saying that they want somebody who is going to be here for quite a while. They don't want to be redoing this every 2 or 3 years. That the new superintendent does a listening and learning tour prior to doing any launching, particularly in the environment that you're going back to, that all of Connecticut is going back to in the fall. They want somebody who understands that they're leading schools, not a business. Somebody who's going to prioritize time to be in all levels of the schools, to be in classrooms, to be sitting with kindergartners, and to be in high school settings, having conversations with students ready to move forward. In addition to that, I think the piece that I heard quite often, particularly in the forums, was around equity, inclusion, diversity, and social justice. And that the hope or the intent is that your new superintendent not only understands, but models and supports instruction and personal actions in all of those focus areas. That your new school leader understands the importance that your central office is not deep in numbers, but perhaps deep in talent, and recognizes that they empower those people in delegating the work. That the new superintendent not only listens to, but pays attention to and is respectful to parents and the parent voice. That that communication, again, to all stakeholders is a key. I think the last piece that I want to share before I talk about the applicant pool, the last piece is that, and I heard this probably throughout the 3 or 4 weeks that I tried to gather information, that when the day is done, your new superintendent never, ever loses sight that decisions need to be made for children. So that's the information that I think was most important to share. With that being said, the unknown going forward in the virtual environment, in the COVID environment, really would be around how many potential candidates will not apply, perhaps because of timing, their allegiance to their present district, the sensitivity of leaving at this time. So there were lots of questions. And I had shared with the steering committee with a weekly update that to my pleasant surprise, your applicant pool, I believe, it's just my impression from the work that I've done, is not only long with 30 applications, but deep. I am really pleased that the decisions that were made by the steering committee to launch with a real heavy focus on Connecticut, New England, but also advertise on the national level, resulted in 30 applications that represent 8 different states. It is my belief that your next superintendent is within this pool. The great majority of applicants are either sitting superintendents in good standing, assistant superintendents in good standing, or central office employees. There are additional applicants that are building level based, highly regarded principals, and there are 1 or 2 applicants that are out of public school sector that are leading in a different domain. What will happen going forward is that I will continue to work with the steering committee, and they will narrow down X number of first round applications. That will be determined hopefully by tomorrow evening and perhaps this evening. The first round applicants will be interviewed July 21st and July 22nd. I believe July 21, 5:30 and 6:30, and then somebody has a scheduled meeting that evening. July 22nd, there could be up to 4 additional interviews. So we've slotted in 6 spaces. Doesn't mean we're going to use all 6. We may use 7 or 8, and that will be determined once the steering committee does their review. That will take place next week, July 21, July 22, followed by first round from whatever that X number is. It'll be X minus for the semifinal round. In most cases, it's no less than 2, no more than 3. First round interview is approximately an hour and 10 minutes. Second round interview is really up to the steering committee. In most cases, an hour and a half. It's a different setting than the first round. Thus, if all goes well, and I'm somewhat certain that it will, the steering committee should be back to their respective school boards on or around the 1st of August, the first week in August, with a candidate of choice. My job going forward is I will supply a question bank for consideration. It doesn't mean that the steering committee needs to use those questions, it's just an opportunity to select from. And also what I will do, particularly when we reach the semifinal round, I believe that I will do, actually my company will do, I don't do it, I have an employee who does do it, as deep a dive and background check that you'll ever find. So all of the information that will come forward about those candidates will happen well in advance of the steering committee narrowing down their first choice. But I'm confident that the community profile represents the voice that I've heard. I'm equally confident that whether it was a brick and mortar environment or a virtual environment, that you have an exceptional applicant pool. I don't think for a second that either the pandemic or the virtual platform in any way marginalize your application pool. So I feel good about the pool. I feel good about the pool. I feel good about the profile. And I'd like to stop there and answer any questions that you may have regarding the profile or the next steps going forward. I either don't see hands raised. There has to be at least a question or two.
Hi, this is Cheryl Graziano.
Hi, Cheryl.
How you doing? I'm
Good.
on the Region 9 Board of Ed. Thank you for your work, and thank you the chairs and the steering committee for their work. It's been very organized, very tight, very timely. So thank you all for your work. Just with respect to once the steering committee has gone through those several rounds of interviews and they're going to go back to the boards, is that the 21 folks, are we not convening anymore in that fashion to be able to make that choice? And will we each of the boards have only the recommendation of one person?
Cheryl, I'm going to defer to Chris and to Randy on your question. At least here's what I believe for first round. What I believe for first round is that the first round is going to be done with the 9 steering committee members. Which means they're doing the heavy lifting. They're doing the review of applications and the first round. I believe that the steering committee will then reduce X to X minus, and I'll let Chris and Randy take it from there.
Yeah, Cheryl, that is what we have done in the past, is that the steering committee does the winnowing down to a, let's call them finalist group. The number could be 2 or 3, typically it's in that range. I have seen it both ways, where the steering committee comes forward with, its choice. But I think it's more common that, let's say there's 2 candidates or 3 candidates, that it's more common that is ultimately decided by the full search committee. So it's not the intent of the steering committee to come to a final choice, but I wouldn't rule it out if by some, I think, very remote possibility that you end up with one person standing who is just either head and shoulders above everybody, or everybody else drops out. So, but I would consider that very unlikely.
Okay, thanks.
Cheryl, let me add to that if I could. I've done a number of regional searches in Connecticut, probably 5 or 6 in the past couple of years. And the conversation that I'll have with the steering committee, here's what I would suggest: that everybody reserves that date, which is July 29th. And then the steering committee is all in. All 9 steering committee members are able to meet that evening. And then the additional school board members from all 3 boards, if they choose to be a part of the semifinals, they're part of the semifinals. Because it would be very, very difficult to schedule every school board member on a particular night to speak with the semifinalists. And the reason I would be concerned around that is the timeline that ER9 has put together, I believe, is working to the advantage of the community, where it's deep and it's quick, and we're not going to lose candidates to the other 6 or 7 or 8 searches in Connecticut. So I would hate to have to postpone that July 29th meeting a couple of weeks down the road because we can't assemble all X number of school board members. So I would suggest, that's how I would suggest going forward, at least hold the date. Are there other questions for me regarding the profile or the candidate pool or the timeline going forward?
Did you
Joe,
mention
this is-
how
yeah.
many other school districts in Connecticut are looking for a superintendent?
Gus, I think I heard your question regarding how many are looking.
Yeah,
I believe the number is 7 right now.
so we're competing with 6 others?
You know, in some cases, it's a hard question to answer. You're competing, but in the ER9 candidate pool is represented by a number of sitting superintendents. There are a number of districts that would not attract sitting superintendents. Okay, so in some cases, the answer is yes. In other cases, it's a different applicant pool, but in all cases, the searches are going on concurrently. So the number changes almost every day. But it's right now, it's a busy time for open searches. It is. Other questions at all? My final comment in regards to the profile and the search is around confidentiality. And boy, I'll tell you, I've been so impressed with the steering committee, and they've received a number of documents that have been confidential just to them. And that's usually around the candidate profile. And I've shared this with the community. What will happen between now and the public meeting in which you name your new superintendent, the term I use is that the process will go dark. The steering committee will have all of the information. They will continue to share that information. They can certainly share that information with you as an elected official, but beyond that, with staff or with community or with the press, all of that must stay confidential. And that's one of the reasons why I think you have such a strong pool, that your candidates know that they will not be exposed unless they are the final candidate standing. So don't be frustrated around that. It's a part of the process, it's an important part, and I've just been impressed with the steering committee to date.
All right. Any other questions from board members or any other comments? I'm just being cautious of time, knowing that we've got another meeting here at 7:30. So otherwise, we'll wrap up this part of the agenda. All right. So we'll just move forward then. Public comment. So again, any members of the public that are on, if you'd like to comment, we do ask you keep your comments to 2 minutes or less. And if you could state your name and address, and then also again, either wave in your picture frame there or do the hands up symbol so we can identify you here. And we'll give it a minute here if anybody would like to comment from the public. I don't see anyone. All right, so then we'll move on. Committee member comment, item 6 on the list. Any committee members? Any other final comments? All right.
Just
Sorry, go ahead.
thank you to Joe for his work and all the members of the school and broader community for their feedback that contributed to the profile today.
Yes, thank you. All right, and with that, then we'll move to adjournment. So can we get a motion to adjourn? It's like John and
Second.
Chris is a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Looks unanimous by all the committee members present here. So we will adjourn at 7:29. So thank you,
Oh,
everyone.
Good job. Good job.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.